So today we are doing something a bit different. We are restoring the Kindlewastes. Hello there everybody, my name is Will, I'm an ecologist by training, and this is An Ecologist Plays, where we talk about nature while playing games, when we are back in the world of Embervale in Enshrouded, of course, here. And yes, as mentioned, today we are going to do a bit of habitat rehabilitation, which is to try and establish some functional vegetation on this very, very steep slope over here. And I've chosen this for a number of reasons. First of all, we do have a flame ultra up there, so this is a great spot to have a permanent impact in terms of establishing some vegetation. And this is a very, very challenging area to do some rehabilitation for a number of reasons that we will get to in a moment. Now, of course, a long time ago, we did restore the forests around Longkeep, with it ending up looking like this, which is of course very different from the way it looked before. So let's see how drastically we can change this landscape right over here. Now, first of all, why would one want to try and do this? Well, if this is your reserve, for example, or your farm or whatever area you have, this is quite bad. Now, of course, this is an arid landscape, so naturally there would be very little vegetation, but we are here on a very steep slope, and there's very little vegetation cover here. And of course, when it rains, well, that is a big problem, because when it rains, of course, you have that happening. All the water just rushing downhill. Now, the rushing downhill isn't the problem. The problem is that as it moves downhill, it is going to dislodge a lot of the sediments that are here. A lot of the topsoil will be eroded away. And the moment you have a little rill forming, a little gully forming down here, that's going to be a major problem, because a lot of the water will be funneled into that rill, into that little erosion gully that is starting to form, and it's going to just become bigger and bigger and bigger. And if you ignore the problem, well, you are in for a bad time later on, because a lot of your nutrients are located here in the topsoil. The seeds of the plants in the area, that will be located in the topsoil, and if you lose that, yeah, that's bad. That's very, very bad. Now, of course, the fact that this is a very steep slope is one of the factors that makes this a very difficult thing to try and rehabilitate. Because if you just sow seeds up here and it rains or the wind blows or anything happens, the seeds are just going to move downhill, and it's not actually going to establish on here. On a steep slope, it's very difficult for plants to actually start establishing. So we need to try and give them as best a chance as possible to try and establish. Also, as we just showed, whenever it rains and water falls in this area here, it's just going to run downhill, and very little infiltration will take place. So the steeper the slope, the less infiltration will occur and the more runoff will occur. And you need infiltration into the soil to actually sustain the little seedlings when they do manage to establish. So those are some of the things that we are going to try and address. And we're going to use real-world methods to try and rehabilitate this, methods that I am quite familiar with. And the first thing we are going to do is to try and cultivate some seedlings here. So we need to grow plants that would typically occur in that area. Because it's no use we grow things like taro over here with their massive leaves. They're going to just dry out in that desert sun. So we need plants that are adapted to the arid regions. Well, grapple plants, that'll be a great one to actually do. So let's, I think, grow 10 of those. Of course, we could also grow some saffron. That'll be great as well, just to establish a few of them here and there. Aloes, I think, would also be quite good. So let's get a few of those going as well. Of course, we do need the Kindlewaste flowers as well. They are really well suited for life in the arid region, so we're going to grow quite a few of those. And you know what, we are on the border with the Nomad Highlands there, so I think we could grow some acacia trees as well, just for a bit of shade in that area as well, in that landscape. Now, while these seedlings are busy growing or being established, let's have a look at how we are going to restore this landscape here. Now, of course, as mentioned, the first thing we need to do is we need to have a way of stopping water moving downhill. And we have the right tool right here. We are going to do what we call ponding, or the creation of hollows or little micro-catchments. And basically all it is us doing that, using our pickaxe to make impressions in the soil. And we're going to kind of go along the contour here, like that. And I think one more over here. But now, of course, when you're actually doing this in real life, you are going to scoop out sediment from here and you're going to put it somewhere. And the way we're going to put it is actually around the downhill lip of this hole we have just dug. And the best way for us to do this, to simulate this in game, would be to actually do this. Use our building hammer and then just kind of plop down in a semicircle around where we have just dug a hole. There we go, we've got kind of a wall over there. Let's make it a little bit steeper there. There we go, I think that actually works quite well. And we're going to do this for all of these ones. Alright, the first row is done. Now, just having one row like this is not going to do much. Yes, it's going to help, but it's not going to be the ultimate solution. Instead, what you need to do is you need to make quite a few more rows. And now the idea is that between that hole there and that hole there, we are going to make another hole, but slightly downhill. So we're going to dig a little hole right over here. And we're going to make another one over here between these two holes, right over here should be a good spot. And again, between these two, we're going to do another one over here. And between these two, again, another one over here. And you know what? Let's make another one over here as well. And so we are going to go downhill and we are going to dig a whole bunch of holes in the ground here. It doesn't matter if it's not perfectly aligned, that is fine. This is a very rough job we are doing here. It's a quick job we are doing here, but it's going to be better than not doing anything. Of course, we are going to leave any plants that are actually in the area. We're not going to uproot them or destroy them or anything along those lines, because the plants that are here already have very well developed root systems and they have got a good chance of survival. So we're going to leave these ones. We're not going to do anything to get rid of them. We're going to leave these ones and all the little cacti up there. Yeah, we're going to leave all those around here to do their thing. Right. There we go. Now the sun is rising quite a bit. It is becoming the heat of the day, which is perfect. We have done quite a bit of work here, but this is just a small section here and it already took us quite a while. And this was just in the game. In real life, yeah, this could take me a whole day just to make these few hollows over here. But it's better than nothing. And you can see here we've got a large area that we technically want to rehabilitate, but I think we're just going to do a few more things. There are two more methods we can use here to try and rehabilitate this region. And the one is quite easy. It's very similar to what we have here, and it would be to actually rip the area or to plow the area. Now you don't necessarily want to actually plow this. Instead, you would rather dig furrows along this contour here, and you can dig a few of these furrows going down. Kind of like what we call swales, which is on the contour, especially in permaculture. People love swales, where you would have a furrow being dug and then you put the soil you actually dig out, you put next to it, so just downslope of it. That way you also catch water. So let's try and do that, shall we? So let's actually have a little furrow we are digging along here, along this contour. And again, we're going around this aloe, which is actually established. And technically, we wouldn't even dig this close to its stem because it would have a very, very extensive root network. Okay, and I think that is as good as we need. Now, of course, again, we technically would be digging out soil here and putting it next to it. So let's do that, shall we? I think the way we're going to simulate that is by actually placing down the sand like this. All right, and that is one furrow or one swale done. Let's make another one. We're going to place it a little bit further downhill. We have got some vegetation in this area, so we're going to try and actually just go downhill of it to try not to disturb the existing vegetation too much. And again, another patch coming up right here, so let's actually go down slope of it. The only reason I'm actually going down slope of this rather than up slope of this vegetation patch here is that when the plants over here actually set seed, some of it will move down into this furrow we are digging here, and they will be trapped there, and we'll get back to that in a moment. But that is one of the things we are trying to have happen. We're trying to get the existing plants that are still in this area to help us with the rehabilitation efforts here. Now, of course, we've dug another furrow here, so let us again just plop down the soil downslope of it. Always plop it down downslope of where you have dug the furrow. Now the thing is, technically any water rushing into this furrow we have dug is now going to move straight down over here, and this is potentially going to just cause erosion. So what we want to do is we want to have some way of stopping the water from moving too fast down into this furrow. This is actually really poorly designed furrow. I'm sorry guys, it really stuffed it up here. Technically it should have run along over here and then headed out over more over to this side. It should not have gone up like that. So I need to address this now. I have made this, and I've made this grave error here. I need to address this now somehow. So let us come back to our botanical gardens here, and let us actually craft something. Now you'll notice there's a bit of a change here in the Hobbit house. This is the Alchemist's Laboratory, and I've got a large crafting area in our little Hobbit hole here by the botanical gardens. I've brought everything over from our previous cave dwelling. Everything is now in the Hobbit house over here. And what I'm going to make is I'm just going to make some rough wood blocks. This is all we need for what we are about to do. Oh, you know what? Actually, Ooh, these plant fiber roof blocks, they could be doing the trick there. Let's actually craft a few of these. And already you can kind of see the things we have been doing here with the hollows and the furrows we've dug. Yeah, the things are coming along now. Now, what one would do in a case like this, you could do this with a furrow that I have dug incorrectly here, or you could do this if you actually have an erosion gully, is you would place down stakes. You would place down, not like stakes you eat, okay? You would place down wooden stakes on the sides of this erosion gully, a little bit away in there, and then you would have some way of actually stopping the water flow. Now, normally what you would use is you could use wire, but then use brush packing as well, which is when you take brush, like branches and stuff and leaves and so, and you actually pack it there against the wire, so that when water flows downhill, it gets slowed down by that. Or you could use fabric, a specific fabric known as bio-jute, which is made with plant material, and that allows water through, but it slows down the water flow. Now, what we are going to be using is, in fact, this plant fiber roof block. This is going to simulate that. But we do need to put in a dropper. So what we're going to do is we're going to place a dropper right over here. We're going to place our wooden droppers, and then directly in line with it, we're going to place another dropper. And in between these droppers, we are going to be placing this, the plant fiber roof block. And this is going to simulate that material you would be using, the bio-jute material, to slow down water flow. And there we go. There is our first barrier done. And we're just going to repeat this a little bit downhill here. So I think right around over here, I think we should also do that again. And there we go, another one done, and let's do it one more time. The steeper the gully, the more frequently you would have. The less steep it is, the less frequently you would have these walls of bio-jute you are placing down. And there we go, another one done. And of course you could also do this all along this contour here as well. You could just place longer lines of this bio-jute all along the contour over here. So let's try that, shall we? So again, what we would do is we would place some stakes in the ground here. And the idea is that the stakes would just provide this structure with, well, some structure and strength. Make it more resistant so it doesn't break too easily. There we go, something like that. And of course you could do this all throughout here. Now the thing is that it's actually raining now, which is perfect because this is going to help us simulate what would happen during a rainfall event. When it rains, of course, water is going to move downhill, and it's going to happen something like this. Okay, so water will fall, rain will fall, water flows downhill. And you can see what's happening at this first hollow over here is that this hollow over here will fill up with water. But eventually it's going to overflow, and it's going to overflow to the sides, and it's going to move over here, and then what happens? It gets caught in the next hollow. And when this hollow is full and water flows out of it, it's going to flow downhill and end up in the next hollow, and so on and so on. And that is why you alternate your hollows when you place it, especially on steep slopes like this. So we're just going to simulate a lot of water moving downhill here, and oh, we've run out. But look at that, I've got 3 more watering cans ready to simulate the water movement. Oh, there we go. Okay, it's a very steep slope. We are even sliding down our little hill there. But there we go. We are simulating the water moving downhill after a rainfall event, or during a rainfall event. Now, of course, with the water moving downhill like this, it's not just the water moving downhill. Any loose leaves will also be washed downhill. Any seeds on the soil will be washed downhill. A lot of organic matter will move downhill, and a lot of propagules will move downhill. So seeds and so that can actually establish new plants. Now, we're going to have our last bit of water moving downhill here. So yeah, part of the reason why we do this so-called ponding or hollows or micro-catchments that we are creating here is so that when it rains, water will be caught in these little ponds, in these little hollows as we also call them, and that's going to be great. Why is it great? Well, as mentioned, you have seeds washing downhill, and they will also now accumulate in these little hollows over here. And as you can see, even after rain, there will still be some water left in these hollows. As you can see the photo there as well. That's quite a bit after a rainfall event. There was still water present in the hollows there. So seeds trying to establish in these hollows will get more water, because instead of the water just moving downhill, it now gets trapped in these hollows. And eventually it will slowly but surely seep into the soil. It will infiltrate. Rather than just having runoff on the soil surface here, you now have infiltration. So the soil will remain moist for longer, and that is great. Additionally, all the plant matter that washes in here, dead leaves and so, will over time decompose, resulting in these little hollows also being nutrient hotspots. And all the organic matter that accumulates there also would act as a mulch, so keep the soil moister for longer, which is brilliant. It is perfect. In essence, what happens is that these ponds here accumulate organic matter, and you now have it turning into fertile soil. So we're going to place down some fertile Kindlewaste sand in these hollows over here, because as you can see, well, plants now start growing. So seeds start germinating, and we now have life returning to this landscape in these hollows. Now the question, of course, is what would happen in these furrows. Now it is very possible that this could do nothing at all, or otherwise what could happen is you, again, like we had in the hollows, have some vegetation starting to establish here as organic matter accumulates behind the wall we have got here, and seeds start germinating due to the increased water availability in these furrows we have created. And of course the question is, well, what happens with these little walls of biojute we have created? Well, the idea is that as water moves down, again, everything gets trapped behind these walls, and what you would most likely end up with is an accumulation of organic matter and seeds and plants uphill of these little walls we have made. So maybe very little vegetation downhill of them, but every time you've got a little wall, plant matter and water will be trapped uphill of it, and you may have some plants establishing there. Lastly, we had our little one over here, so we most likely also would have trapped some soil and seeds behind it. At this point, you may be asking, well,
who are you, who are so wise in the ways of science?
The thing is that this is what my master's thesis was on. So for my MSc, I looked at what determines the success of rehabilitation efforts in the arid Karoo region of South Africa. That was my focus. So for 3 years, I did research on this. And I worked with some of the foremost rehabilitation experts in the Karoo ecosystem of South Africa, which was absolutely brilliant. Now, of course, this is just part of the battle. You could leave it like this, and maybe you will have some rehabilitation actually happening. Maybe you'll have vegetation establishing like this, because as long as you have some vegetation around the patch, in this case uphill of it, and the seeds can make their way into these little micro-catchments, well, you could have some rehabilitation happening. But you could also do things to try and speed all of this up. And that is where these seedlings will come in. I think the sun is about to set, so we may just need to wait it out a bit. So in the meantime, let me show you what I have been up to. As you can see here, I'm busy with the Veilwater Basin area of our botanical gardens, but that is still a work in progress. What I have, however, more or less completed is the basic structure of the next biome we are going to be visiting. The Albanese summits, so the mountain biome. You can see here we've got a cave which will house our yak and frizzy goats, and then of course we've got our granitic outcrop here, our mountains that we can see in the distance over there as well, and of course quite a bit of snow as well. And there we go, it is nighttime now, which will allow me to actually show you what I have done regarding lighting in our botanical gardens. Instead of those bright white luminescent blocks, we now have these azure russula mushrooms now lighting the way for us, so showing us where the path actually is. And the idea being that you would come through the botanical gardens here with your torch, or maybe just wander around kind of in the dark. I think this gives a very nice ambiance. Alright, morning's here, the morning's here. So let's head on over back to our rehabilitation. Doesn't look like much, but it is looking a little bit better, I think. Now, of course, what would you do with this? Well, you could just leave it as is, as I've mentioned, but you could also try and sow seeds. Now, with arid regions like this, yeah, a lot of the times you're going to sow seeds and nothing's going to happen. Maybe you sow 100,000 seeds, maybe you have 2 or 3 plants actually growing. That's still kind of a success because it's 2 or 3 plants more than they were. Okay, but it can be a bit of a snowballing effect. So if you can have some starting to establish and doing well in these little hollows, they can flower and they can set seed, and those seeds can now be sown in the wild, in this landscape, without you having to go and sow seeds. So what some people also do is, instead of sowing seeds, they transplant little plants. So they germinate those seeds in the nursery, they have those little seedlings grow nice and big, and then when the plants are nice and strong, they actually transplant those plants into nature. okay, into the area they want to rehabilitate. And in our case, we are going to do that with these acacia trees here. So these nomad highland slender trees, they basically are acacias. Let's say we grew these in the nursery, and now we are planting some of them when they're nice and big in these hollows here. So we're going to plant one there, we're going to plant one over here, I think. Maybe one right over here in this little section there. And maybe we'll plant one over here. Maybe another one over here. And you know what? I think let's plant one right up here. There we go. Now, the idea with actually planting the seedlings or the saplings here rather than sowing the seed is to remove the uncertainty of whether you are actually going to get any plants whatsoever. So you're trying to increase the chance of actually establishing vegetation. The thing is that it is more labor intensive and costly to go and cultivate the plants and then transplant them. Okay, it's easier, it's cheaper, it's quicker to just sow seeds, but you've got a lower chance of success. But let's say we were successful, and let's say we managed to get some aloes growing. Maybe the aloes actually possibly wouldn't actually grow right in the center there, because it may actually be too high moisture levels in the soil there. So they may establish more along the edge of the hollow here. They will still benefit from increased water being present in the hollows, but instead of growing in the actual waterlogged soil, they may be growing next to it. Let's have another one over there, and I think we may have maybe some establishing over here, a little bit further up from the actual walls we have built here. Of course, we also have a lot of these Kindlewaste flowers, and they do look like typical pioneer plants. You most likely would have quite a lot of them establishing, so they would have seeds that germinate very easily, even with very little water, and their seedlings most likely can survive the desiccation very well. They also most likely have very, very fast growth rates. That's typical pioneers for you. They grow very quickly, they flower at a young age, they produce lots and lots of seeds, and a lot of those seeds will actually germinate with very little rain that has fallen. So let's say we sowed some of these seeds, and you most likely would sow some of them. You don't just want the typical climax vegetation establishing, you do want some pioneer species because they are very good at surviving the disturbances. So you most likely would have this not being a very nice environment to grow in, especially at the start. You'd need some plants that can handle the harshness of it all. So you'd have some of these Kindlewaste flowers growing here, and I think maybe one actually established over here in this little fertile patch over here as well. So you'd have a mixture of your typical pioneers, like those Kindlewaste flowers, and then you'd also have some plants that are not pioneers. They would come in a little bit later perhaps, or they normally would come in a little bit later. So you may start out with them. We're going to plant the saffron here as well. They would most likely have been one of those. Maybe, well, they do have small seeds, so they could perhaps establish at the start. The wild saffron, not the cultivated one we actually are growing here, they do have seeds, and small seeds at that, so they may be able to establish quite early on and quite easily. However, we're just planting these kind of as more climax community plants. If you have got any questions about that, please do pop it down in the comments, and I'll be happy to explain what on earth I mean with all that as well. And then we are going to introduce one of my favorite plants here. This is Harpagophytum procumbens. This is the Kalahari Devil's Claw, in the game here called Grapple Plant, because, well, that is another common name that they have. And they don't look like much here, but we actually do have one growing right down here, I believe it was. Let's have a look. I'm pretty sure I saw one. There we go. It is actually flowering as well. There it is. Now, it doesn't really show it the way it normally is. Instead, it will be creeping a little bit more on the ground here, so it's a bit more of a ground cover. And it also has, what we don't see here, it has got massive tubers underground, and those tubers are harvested for medicinal purposes. And it is a perennial plant, meaning that it survives for many, many years. And they produce these horrendous seed capsules. So when they have flowered, like the one down there is doing, they will produce very woody, spiny seed capsules. And do yourself a favor and go Google what the Kalahari Devil's Claw seed capsule looks like. It is, It's horrible. You don't want to step in that. One thing can step on it and not be affected severely by stepping on it, and that will be the ostrich. And they've got very, very tough feet. They're able to step on it, and as they walk, they actually disperse some of the seeds. Now, around about 20 to 25% of the seeds would actually be dispersed any given year. And the seeds are also dormant for long, long periods of time. So the seeds can survive in the ground for 20 plus years. So let's say this grapple plant over here grows and it flowers and it sets seeds. Next year, when the winter comes, it's going to die back and it's going to survive with its underground tuber. Next spring rains come, even if it's just a little bit, the plant regrows. It's got water stored in its tuber. It can use that to regrow. Now it flowers again. Every year it flowers and it has some of those seed capsules landing on the ground, and over time they are releasing their seeds over long periods of time, and those seeds are dormant and they wait for the right conditions. They wait for a nice bit of rain to fall, and then they will germinate. So if we can manage to get some of them established here for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, those plants will be producing seeds, and they will, for the next century perhaps, have those seeds germinating over time and growing in this spot over here. So this isn't a quick solution. We are doing a lot of things here very quickly, but hopefully what we are doing is going to result in this area slowly but surely healing itself. We are just kind of kick-starting that process of rehabilitation or succession. But yeah, I'm actually very, very happy with this. We'll check back in a bit to see how it is progressing. For now though, it is time for us to domesticate our next animal. And the animal we are going for today is the Fae Deer. And you can see here what the Fae Deer loves would be some plant fiber, interestingly some milk, and then also some corn cobs, penny bun mushrooms, the porcini mushrooms, and then forest beets as well, with those tubers that they have underground, those storage organs there. So it seems as though the Fae Deer has quite a varied diet, feeding on seeds as well as tubers and fungi for good measure as well. And of course, just grazing on grasses as well. So let's head on over to the Revelwood, and we're going to go to that ancient obelisk there. There are usually a few Fae Deer running around there, I remember. So let's head on over there. Okay, we are getting close, and you can see some forest beet growing here as well. So that's really, it seems, one of the favorite food of the Fae Deer. Who would have thought? There we go. There are some right down there. There's also hop hair down there. There are quite a few in this area. There we go. There's the first Fae Deer. They are quite timid, obviously. They are prey animals after all, so they would be very, very timid. Let's just keep an eye on it. When it's vigilant, we don't go closer. And voila! We have our first Fae Deer. Yay! We always need at least 2 of each creature. If they are herd animals, we do need more than just 1. And in this case, the Fae Deer do seem to live in little, at least in pairs. I'm not sure whether they occur in smaller groups, but usually I think I've seen them in pairs. So we'd have a male and a female, dominant male and female most likely in an area, and maybe last year's offspring also with them. But there we go, we have got our second Fae Deer as well. And you know what, we're just going to head on over to our Embervale Botanical Gardens, and we're going to put them in their new home. And these little Fae Deer will live in our Revelwood section of the Botanical Gardens. Hopefully they don't stray into the Enshrouded area over here and actually have those shroud explosions damaging them. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Let's have a quick look at the Fae Deer here. Of course, called deer because they resemble deer, kind of, and they are as skittish as deer, most certainly. But that's about where the similarities end. I just noticed, if you look at their feet, they're a little bit difficult to see, there we go. Notice there, they actually have like proper dog-like feet rather than actual hooves, so they're not related to deer at all. Oh wait, look at that. One of the things that also makes them very deer-like in appearance are those little white spots you could see on the back. If they stop looking at me, there we go, on the back you could see some white spots there. That's very reminiscent of what we find on fawns of deer, and on things like fallow deer, for example. You'd also have those little white spots, and the idea being that, well, these animals occur in wooded areas, and you don't just have dense shade in the forested environments. Instead, you've got dappled shade, you've got sunlight shining through those leaves there, casting little light spots on the forest floor. And that's what those little white spots on the back of these Fae Deer are also representing. The light hitting a surface, coming through the leaves here and hitting the surface below. And you'll find that in lots and lots of forest species, those little white spots on them. We also have it here in South Africa. We also have it on the bushbuck, which are a species not only found in forests, but very often found in forested environments. Around here, at least, they are very often found in forested environments, and they have those white spots as well. Of course, you can't talk about the Fae Deer without talking about those massive ears. Most likely very, very good hearing to help them detect predators that may be trying to sneak up on them. But what about those weird adornments? Those weird little feather-like appendages flapping behind them? Well, I suspect that is to try and attract a partner. It may be to break up the outline of the animal, being kind of a disruptive camouflage. Similarly, the tail of the Fae Deer here also showing those kinds of adornments. But it could be a way for them to indicate how fit they are. The bigger the adornments, the more resources they have put into creating those adornments, so the better the condition of the animal must be. It depends, of course, on whether those adornments fall off and whether it will be permanent, so it grows throughout its life, or whether it is just a seasonal thing and it falls off after each breeding season. If it falls off after each breeding season, this is a very honest advertisement. A female, for example, could look at a male and see this male is doing very well this season because look at those beautiful adornments it has. Or the male could look at the female and say exactly the same thing. Look at those adornments, well, they must be doing very well this breeding season. And it could help them select the perfect breeding partners. But if it is a permanent fixture, well, then maybe it has other functions rather than being an honest advertisement to show the fitness of an individual. Then maybe it is rather to break up the outline of the Fae Deer in the forested environment, kind of resembling branches and leaves on it, like oak leaves in particular. Maybe it is a form of disruptive camouflage. Anyway, I think that is very cool. Let us go and see how the rehabilitation is going. Slowly. That is how it is going. But that is expected. I mean, you don't expect this to happen overnight, especially in arid regions. It'll take a very, very long time for this to be rehabilitated. But much faster than it would have been if we just left it and let nature run its course. If you, for example, in South Africa, look at ostrich camps, where ostriches are kept in little camps where there are lots of them tightly packed together, the soil is stuffed. And if you leave that area, that camp, with no ostriches in it, and you leave it for 100 years, it will still look the same. It is completely stuffed. And in order to actually have anything growing there, you need to do things like we have been doing over here. Alright, but we'll check back in a moment again to see how things are going. And there we go. As you can see, things are looking much nicer. There's quite a bit of vegetation that has established. And yes, when you do this in real life, you could water the plants, but that may result in them actually just having much more leaves and fewer roots. And then when the first severe drought hits, or when you actually stop watering them, the plants then die. You don't want to do that. You want nature to more or less run its course, but you want to give nature the best chance of success. So what we have done here, seems to have worked very, very well. Now next time I do believe we will be heading over to the mountain region, but first we are going to have to take on some Shroud draconian vultures. So join me next time for a bit of an adventure into the Shroud, and then of course heading into the Albanese summits. And as always, if you have any comments, please pop them down in the comments below, and if you have any suggestions of what you'd like me to chat more about, please also pop that down into the comments below. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a nice big thumbs up, share with your friends, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe. Really awesome to welcome everybody to the Ecology Squad. And until next time, everybody, stay safe. I'll see you all soon. Cheers!